What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to rank every phone call in Scream, the franchise. Now, these are going to be, obviously, the Ghostface calls, and there's a little bit of a criteria here. I try to keep it a little bit open. I counted overall 22 phone calls. Some are much shorter than others. Some I also kind of combined scenes where phone calls were very close related. Now, you'll see that as the list goes on, but the criteria pretty much is Ghostface or Roger L. Jackson's voice needs to be present for at least a sound or at least a word, okay? And you'll see as my dead last entry what I mean by that. But there needs to be a little bit of Roger L. Jackson to count it. But I am including, if it's the voice changer in 3 or if it's Sidney calling Billy and Stu, those things all count because of his voice. Obviously, they're not the killer calling, or at least that Sidney one isn't, or like the prank call, but I do want to include those in my overall list, okay? I'm going to try to give a very brief description of what I'm talking about, talk about the scene really quickly, and move on to the next one because, again, we got 22 scenes in all. Okay, so number 22 is going to be the Stone call in Scream 3. This is when he's going through Dewey's trailer. There's really almost nothing to talk about here because the entire call, while it is okay, and I do like the reference of Tatum, it's the only time we hear Dewey actually talk about Tatum. Too bad it's not actually Dewey. The entire phone call is just Dewey's voice talking. The only time you hear Roger L. Jackson's voice is the attack noise, the or whatever the stupid noise is when Ghostface is actually attacking. That's it. It's not even technically the phone call. I'm going to give this one a pass, but also say it is dead last for that reason. Next up at number 21 is the call to Jill when she's in the car with Kirby and Olivia. Not too much to talk about here. The conversation is really played, I would say, honestly, just to keep his voice present and just to kind of remember that stuff is going on. Also, I guess for Olivia to say, like, hey, I got that call too, or a similar call to that, but it's really not impactful whatsoever. It doesn't really add anything to anything in the story. And again, it gets played. It's such a short period of time. I couldn't put this any higher than number 21. Coming in at number 20 is the Trudy Sherry phone call at the beginning, the first opening of Scream 4. Now, I generally like, and you'll see as the list goes on, a lot of the Scream 4 phone calls are way higher than even some of the other ones, or the other movies. But this one, I would say, is insanely weak. It's the same phrase being uttered. Obviously, an homage to the first one, but it doesn't really make any kind of impact. It's just repeating the same thing over and over. And most of the scare and the cat and mouse idea of that entire sequence is almost based off of texting, not even based off of the phone call. Now, obviously, maybe that was done for a certain reason, but it doesn't excuse it on my list. And also, by the way, let me throw in, a big part of this entire list is not just Roger's voice, but also how the receiving caller, right, who gets the call, how they act, right, their performance, what's going on in that sequence, and how much is that good, right, and that determines it as well. Some of these, by the way, the ones I've already listed, they have not been very strong at all. Okay, coming in at number 19 is the a call to set up Sidney's attack in Scream 2 in the house party. It's not anything special. I do like it. I mean, it's the first time you hear the Hello Sidney from the actual killer in Scream 2, but at the same time, it literally is only to set up Ghostface scaring her from behind, doing that chase, which the chase is okay. It's pretty solid, but overall, the call is literally just to set up something else, and it's very short. It doesn't really do much for me, and that is why it's here. Coming in at number 18 is the Sidney call to Billy and Stu. So this is what I referenced in the beginning. I wanted to put it higher, but ultimately, you only hear Roger's voice, I believe, 3 or 4 words in that. She does it a lot, or Nev Campbell or Sidney does it much like how Billy and Stu, or Stu in particular, did it to her, where he plays the voice box directly in front of his voice, where you kind of hear both of them. That's really all you get in that phone call. Now, the phone call is phenomenal. In fact, it's one of, I would say, the better phone calls of the entire series. But in terms of ranking it for how powerful it is for Ghostface, well, she's not even Ghostface, right? She's not a killer. It is insanely good, but the amount of Roger L. Jackson's voice we hear is very, very minimum, and again, that's why I couldn't put this any higher. Coming in at number 17 is the prank call to Sydney in the, opening of Scream 2, I guess right after the movie theater sequence. It's good. It's solid. I really think it just shows more of Sydney's personality, which is a very cool thing to do, very different thing to do. And the idea, obviously, right, is that it's just a prank caller, and she figures it out very, very quickly. But at the time, especially when you first hear that "Hello, Sydney," you don't really know, right? And maybe like the movie, well, you expect the movie to calm down because they just did the opening sequence, but maybe it's not going to calm down. You don't know, at the time that you're watching it for the first time. So I respect it for what it is, but obviously Sydney figures it out very, very quickly, and the voice stops very, very quickly. So that is why it's here. Coming in at number 16 is Sarah's call in Scream 3. It's a solid call, but you're going to see a trend, right? Scream 3, obviously, the voice changer, I'm not a fan whatsoever of it, and mainly because it takes away from you have the voice. You have an incredible voice, and you choose to not use it in place of, at the time, I guess, right, new age technology. I understand it. I get it, I guess. I wasn't around. I mean, I was 4 years old at the time Scream 3 came out, but the call is okay. I like it, obviously, when it switches to Ghostface, and I do think the switch over is generally solid. It's solid in a lot of the calls in Scream 3 in terms of when that switch over is done. But again, like most of the call is as Roman. It's not as, Roger's voice. And so it's not as impactful as it could be. And again, that is why it's here. Followed up, let's just do the same kind of thing, right? Number 15 is Cotton's call at the beginning of Scream 3. Solid, really solid. I like Cotton's response to it. Again, this is one that I think is driven also pretty heavily by the receiving end of it. But at the same time, again, most of it is just playing kind of this fan that's trying to hit on him to then just obviously be Ghostface. Now, I like the idea, right, trying to figure out where Sydney is. Like, he has contacts, like, where is she? I like that a lot. That's a really, and again, this is not necessarily low on a 22, place list. It's definitely, in the middle there. It's definitely solid. Again, though, I would have preferred to hear Ghostface's voice or Roger's voice the entire time. Number 14 is the call to Sydney from Stu. So this is the only time in Scream 1 that Stu is actually the one calling, and I put it here, and I guess I respect it because you can kind of tell. Now, I guess we can tell because we've maybe watched the movie a couple more times than just one, right? But the first time you're watching it, maybe you don't, notice it, but I think you can after that it's clearly a different person. And the way they kind of just, I guess, go about carrying themselves is definitely different. And I like that. I like it quite a bit. It's pretty short overall, and it's just to kind of deliver the message that it was the wrong guy, even though, I mean, technically she was right. She got one of them, but it's definitely good. It's just pretty darn short. Number 13 is the call to Sydney when she's doing her self-help, calls in Scream 3. This is where her mother, Roman's using the mom's voice, and then he switches to his own. Again, when he switches to Ghostface, it's pretty solid. A lot of it is just portrayed by Maureen's voice. Now, the thing, I guess, that why it puts it up here, because I think Ghostface's or Roger's voice's delivery is better in some of the lower entries. This is one that's driven, I would say, 50-50, if not more, 60-40, by Sydney herself. Her response to being, I guess, found out, right? That he's calling on the home phone or the home line, not the office line, right? Her kind of response of just being very freaked out and also just scared and sad that, like, oh, Jesus, like, I got found, right? That, I think, really carries this scene big time. And it's actually an example of how every single Sydney scene in Scream 3 is the best scenes in Scream 3. Coming in at number 12 is the Marnie and Jenny calls in Scream 4. Now, this is an example of, technically, they're two different calls, right? Because Jenny calls Marnie as the prank, and then she actually gets the call, which is real, right before Jenny dies. So it's, I guess, important to kind of combine those. The prank call is a prank call. It wouldn't be special, or it's not special. It would be kind of dead last if I did it on its own. But I really actually like the call to Jenny, talking about, how this isn't a comedy, this is a horror movie. Like, I like, and he's talking about, like, being in the director's chair. Really good. Really good. I think, again, this is an example of Scream 4, and even in parts of Scream 3, Roger really, I think, brings a different kind of maliciousness to the voice that he doesn't necessarily have in 1 and 2. And you see that a lot, I would say, specifically in 4. And you're really an early indicator of what's to come. This is a really good phone call, I would say, and you're going to get more of it. Coming in at number 11 is the second call to Sydney in Scream 4. This is talking about, like, the family ties, they cut the deepest and all that stuff. It's good. To Sydney, I guess specifically maybe even in this phone call, it's almost more psychological than, or like messing with her emotions, messing with her as a person, that like she always gets people in trouble. You don't always get that. In fact, you don't get that for most of the phone calls in the entire series. So I guess I would, give this praise for being different. It's not the most amazing, but I would say it's definitely unique in what he's attacking in Sydney. What he's trying to like invoke in her. Definitely different than any of the other ones. Number 10 is Cece's call, obviously in Scream 2. I like it. I thought I liked it more. Like I thought when I was making this list, this would be like in the top 5. I don't think it's nearly as good as the other calls in the series that we'll get to. I do think it's pretty good. It's definitely a good example of a very long cat and mouse game, which includes all of it, not just necessarily the phone call, then also the chase stuff. But I like it. This is one where you kind of feel this is more brought about, I would say, from Cece than necessarily, again, from Roger's voice, because it's good, and the whole, like, make sure you set the alarm, like, that's a really good line. But a lot of it is off of her and, like, trying to get people to help her, but, the static or, the phone lines aren't very good, so she has to kind of come back in, and she gets spooked by one of her, own members that are still in the house. Like, there's a lot going on in the scene more than just actually Ghostface, which I definitely like. Number 9 is Sydney's call when she gets to the final house of Scream 3. So, this is an example actually of maybe you could combine these phone calls, but they're not exactly the same scene, right? She's got the police station call, and she's got when she's there where she has to throw the gun in the pool. This is that one. I like it. I think this is an example. We've seen it before where sometimes Ghostface, like, pretends, or, like, he's got somebody in the area where he can talk about, like, the environment that he's at, right? I guess, like, Scream 1 would be a good example, like, talking about the balcony, but he's not actually there, or patio or whatever. But, in this one, like, he's literally watching her, but he's also not. Like, he sees her. He has to be seeing her. It's just she can't see him. And he can, he knows the gun, and he tells her to throw in the pool. I like it. It's a pretty good scene. Coming in at number 8 is Rebecca's call in Scream 4. I know nobody really is a fan, at least online that I've seen, of Rebecca in general. I agree with that assessment, but the phone call is actually very, very good. The whole, can I take a message? You are the message. To this one, this is entirely carried by Roger. I like the whole, when, she's telling him she's in the hospital, then the car alarm goes off, and he says, Rebecca, it doesn't sound like you're, like, I love that kind of just, like, playing around with her, and it's like, I know you're lying to me, because, like, I'm standing, like, within 10 feet of you, but, like, I'll play along. I love that a lot. And again, I think this phone call is definitely all him and almost none of her. Number 7 is Sydney's first call in Scream 4, and I really like this also because of how she, I guess, goes about it too, right? Where she's just had enough of it. I believe she answers with saying, like, what? It's not even hello. And then he says, he does say hello, Sydney, but, it's not the first words that she said are not the normal ones. I like it a lot. And again, more of taunting, almost in like a meta way, right? Obviously being like, you're not, like, what are you talking about? You still think you're the star of all this stuff. I like that a lot. Again, kind of playing on the idea of a remake or a reboot, and using it kind of against Sydney. So really, really good. Number 6 is the police station phone call to Sydney in Scream 3, setting up, the grand finale. Really good. Again, this is an example because, thank God, after he uses Sydney's voice on her, which I think is fine, and then it's just all Roger. You know what I mean? And this, I believe, to my knowledge, at least because I wrote them all down, like, this is the one that I would say is almost all him, or maybe I guess when she gets to the house, that's obviously all his voice too. But it's almost like a breath of fresh air, where it's like, okay, you're just having Sydney talk to the the voice of Ghostface, and it's like we haven't really gotten that much in Scream 3. So I think it's done really well. I think, again, her reaction to it, and getting up to try to tell everybody, and then he says, bring no attention to yourself, all that kind of stuff. Really, really good. And again, a breath of fresh air, but also very heavily, I guess this is high up on the ranking because of Sydney herself. Okay, top 5 here. The 5th one is the Kirby Jill phone call when, obviously Charlie is calling from Olivia's closet. This one is really, really good. You'll see another one from Scream 4 here really quickly, actually, too. But this is a phenomenal, scene. It's got a little bit of cat and mouse stuff going on, but it is also different in the way, right? Because he's like whispering, and it's like, why are you whispering? And then you obviously find out about in the closet, but it's not in your. I never said I was in your closet. Really, it's good. It's contained. I mean, it's a very small, area that this entire thing is being taken place in. It's just their room and then, Olivia's room, but very, very good. Number 4 is the Kirby trivia, let's call it, right? Obviously, towards the end of Scream 4. Awesome. Obviously, harkening back to Scream 1. I like the little throw-in line that I didn't even hear when she's answering the questions, and she, obviously she's pleading to not do it. At some point, he says if you need help, just ask Sydney or something like that. And obviously Sydney's not there because she's looking for Jill. But that's I like that line for some reason. But that's a really good scene. Again, his voice is great. And then this is another example of Kirby steals the scene, right? Hayden Panettiere does a really good job throughout the entire film, but she easily steals it as well. So it's a really good back and forth. You got some movie trivia harkening back to, Scream 1, but you also have just really good performances by Roger and also from Kirby herself. Number 3 is Randy's call. I've always liked this. I think it's really, really good. It's a little bit slower, but also the tension is high because it's okay, well, obviously he's watching you. Where is he coming from? You got to keep him talking. But really, carried by Jamie Kennedy in this one. Ghostface is good. Why you even hear Randy talking about, getting the girl and all that stuff. Really cool. But even his things, just saying hello, and the first thing I believe he asks is, "What's your favorite scary movie?" And then obviously Mrs. Loomis asks it back to him. It's a really good back and forth. And then his talk about Stu and Billy is classic. It's really, really good. And so while I would say this is almost like a 60-40, 70-30 conversation with Randy talking most of it, right? It's still incredibly, incredibly good. And this is how you do, I would say, almost a cat and mouse kind of phone call. Number 2 is Sydney's very first call in the entire series, the call in Scream 1. Classic. There's not much that can be said that hasn't already been said, but it establishes the Hello Sydney tagline that stuck around and always needs to stick around, right? Her calling his bluff is really, really bold of her, you know what I mean? And it works out, I would say, okay. But it's just really good. It kind of establishes also the rules, right? Why, running out the front door instead they're running up the stairs and stuff, which is dumb. All of that stuff were just really good. So this is, there definitely is more conversation here also from, Billy at the time, or I guess Roger's voice, right? But Sydney does an incredible job here as well. And number 1, I mean, this is kind of obvious, right? The Casey call, the very first call we ever hear in Scream. Super good. I mean, really, I'd like to even make this, if this does well enough, I could update it with the Scream 5 calls, whatever those calls are going to be. It's hard. I've talked about it before. It's hard to beat Scream 1 in general as a movie. It's also hard, I would say, or if not impossible, to ever replicate that first phone call because it's just such a good cat and mouse. There's just such good delivery from both of them. Obviously, the classic, I want to see who I'm looking at and I want to see who I'm talking to. You can never do that again and have the same impact. You just can, you honestly can never do it. And it lasts this is a long phone call. It's technically multiple phone calls, right? But it's all in one sequence. It's incredible. It's an incredible start. Probably the best. I mean, it's definitely the best start of any Scream movie, I would argue. And again, I don't really think it could be beaten. So let me know your rankings in the comments below. Make sure you guys are subscribed if you want to see more. Definitely let me know. Leave a like on the video, all that stuff. I can definitely update this in the future. All my social media, my Twitter, my second channel, our Patreon, and all that stuff. Links for them all are in the description below if you guys want to support us there. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all on the next video.